let's get into it. Our guests this morning, Professor Pinaman Appau, who we've already said hello to. We're also joined by Professor Titus Beyuo. He's Associate Professor of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the University of Ghana, but he's also written extensively about the provision of mental health care here in Ghana. And I'm sure you remember Prof. Titus Beyuo, also from the Ghana Medical Association. Prof, good morning to you.
Good morning, Kojo. Good morning to Dr. Pinaman and then the rest of the crew.
Prof. Pinaman, let's get it right.
Yeah, Prof. Pinaman, yes.
Yes. Wonderful. It's great to have you, Prof. Beyuo. Okay, let's get started. And Prof. Pinaman, I mean, after listening to this documentary, what are the biggest impressions that it's made on you?
Well, thank you again for having me this morning, and let me say good morning to your listeners. I listened to the documentary, and my first impression was, well, this is a good one, because I think it captures most of the issues in mental health. It just cut across all the issues, and I thought it was a good one. Well, I have to say that mental health, should I say, have not received the attention that it's supposed to. And it's always great to have people shine the light on mental health so that we can discuss some of these issues. So it was a good one for the authority.
Okay. I mean, I think we all gasped in shock when we heard that, about half of those who are actually tasked with looking after our mental health didn't know about things as ordinarily commonplace as postpartum depression. Is there a real capacity issue when it comes to the delivery of mental health care?
Unfortunately, there is. I should say that maybe it stems from our training. When you take the doctors, for instance, when it comes to mental health, it's looked at as a specialist area. So when we are in medical school, we just have a rotation of, I think, 2 weeks through psychiatry, and during that time I can tell you that it's like a holiday, sort of. You understand? So you don't really get to grasp psychiatry per se. So it's after your training and you get more into psychiatry, that's when you tend to appreciate mental health proper. And one of the things that we put in place to be able to attract people into mental health and for them to get to know about mental health, again, when you take the doctors, was to establish the third rotation in-house job. It opened way for the doctors to come in into mental health to do their rotations, and therefore they got more exposed to psychiatry or mental health, should I say. And then they stayed and specialized in psychiatry, and that's how come now we have quite a number of psychiatrists in place. So yes, there is that gap, and we have to take steps to fill that gap, should I say.
We'll talk a bit more about that. Also, we'll talk about access, which is very important. But I want to bring in Prof. Beyuo. Prof, now you have written extensively about Ghana's, let's call it, attempts to provide mental health care. Having listened to this documentary, seriously, where are we going wrong? Oh, it seems we've been disconnected from Prof. Beyuo. We will reconnect. But look, same question. You've been running the Mental Health Authority. Yeah, what are we doing wrong? Why haven't we managed to pin down the delivery of mental health care?
I think that one of the biggest issues in mental health has been the lack of awareness of mental health. Quite recently, we were working on or the authority was working on its strategic plan, which would cover 2023 to 2026, and we did a little survey, and really most people told us that we still don't know about mental health, and we want more education on it. And I think it's one of the biggest issues that we have to look at, and that's why Mental Health Authority took the bold step to declare May as the Purple Month, so that we can create awareness. We want people to come to the understanding that mental health is not just or mental illness is not just an event that happens, but mental health is part of us. It's part of our everyday lives. And the earlier we set up and start tackling it, the better. And we should come to the point whereby we stop thinking that mental illness is for just a certain group of people and some of us are immune to it. No, we are not immune to it. It can be me today, it can be you tomorrow. And so there's a need for us to take a look at it.
All right. There's something I want to ask you about what you've explained, but I want to bring in Prof. Beyuo because I think we've reconnected with him. Prof, did you hear the question, or shall I go over it one more time?
Please go over it for me.
Certainly. So we're just wondering, what is Ghana doing wrong? Why have we failed to pin down the correct way of delivering mental health care to the population?
Okay, I think I would agree with the submissions made by Prof. Pinaman that there is a capacity problem and it's also not prioritized. In the health sector, right from the training of healthcare workers through to allocation of resources, it's been a battle. And there's a competition for resources in different areas. And it looks like mental health often gets the least. Until recently, in the training of doctors, you wouldn't get a lot of people having enough exposure. And when you were even looking for people to specialize, very few will opt for mental health, that's psychiatry. And if you go into our hospital setup, if there's a mental health corner, you will see it in some obscure place, and that's it. So we haven't really prioritized it. And the focus of our healthcare for a long time has been the infectious diseases. But our disease burden is shifting, where non-communicable diseases, including mental health, is gaining a lot of prominence. So it is high time we reprioritize. I mean, I was fortunate to be one of the first 2 doctors who opted to do a house job in psychiatry. And I think that's when I met Prof. Pinaman, who was then already a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And the exposure I had in the 6-month period, I fell in love with mental health. And even as an obstetrician now, I still focus a lot on the aspect of mental health that applies to women's health.
Very important. Thanks for that. Now, Prof. Beyuo has written an abstract about postpartum depression, of course, because he's a professor of obstetrics and gynecology. And shockingly, 147 women were screened, and he discovered that 50.3% of them, had presented with postpartum depression. We'll be learning more about that in a moment because it's an important part of this documentary. But Prof, you made the point earlier that look, it's a lack of awareness of the understanding of how important this is. But I would suggest that those who run healthcare in Ghana are healthcare professionals. Are they also not aware that mental health is important?
Well, I think that they may be aware, but like Titus said, I think it's a lack of prioritizing it. And again, that's why now the authority is pushing for the integration of mental health into all the disciplines. That's because we keep making the point, or studies have shown that most of the time mental health conditions coexist with physical health conditions, right? And then when we take care of the mental health needs of the individual, then the physical health conditions outcome is actually improved. And so we're trying to let those in authority know that, look, you cannot just, let's say, look at HIV and that's it. The person with HIV has mental health issues that, when the mental health issues are treated, will make his or her HIV treatment outcome better. So we are trying to push for them to have a better understanding so that they can put the policies right, should I say.
So let me ask you this. Last year in November, when the budget was read, we were told that mental health care is going to be put on the National Health Insurance Scheme. Has that happened?
Not yet. We had a conversation, or we've been working on it for quite a while now, and the CEO of the NHI, the then I think Honorable Okoboy was then the CEO of the NHI, and he mentioned that by April it will be operationalized. Unfortunately, that's when the reshuffling came through. So we are still working on it, and we are hoping that latest by the end of June we should be able to operationalize it. Now he is in the Ministry of Health. He's the representative, the President's representative for Ministry of Health, and we are hoping that through him we'll be able to push so that we get it done and operationalized by June.
I mean, Doc, is that the explanation that you are being given? Because, I mean, at this point, I think we all know that if a system works, it doesn't matter who is in charge, the system should work. So if a minister is changed or an NHIA boss is changed and a process has been set in motion with an April deadline, it ought to still happen by the deadline. So are they explaining to you that it is just because they changed bosses that the deadline didn't, get met?
Well, I totally agree with you that it shouldn't depend on the change of the minister, but what it is that we are not even just actually working with the minister, the CEO, we are working with the directors of NHI, and there were certain issues that we needed to work on. So we are still working on it, and hopefully get all those sorted out and then get it operationalized.
Can you sum it up? What exactly is holding it up?
Well, they have these things that they call the actuarial processes that they need to go through to determine whatever, and the costs and all that. They have their own language that they speak, and we've gone through all that processes, but because of the cost, when we went forward and made our case, we took certain aspects of the care out. So for instance, we didn't add inpatient care because it was going to bloat the figures, but the directors there thought, look, when someone comes in initially, then the person needs an emergency care. So for the first few days, NHIA should be able to cover those costs. So we are working on that to include it, and that's what delayed the process. So we are on course. Hopefully we will get it done.
So has a new deadline been given?
Well, we are hoping that by the end of June we should operationalize it.
Is that what the NHIA is saying, or?
That's what I'm hoping.
Okay. They haven't communicated any deadline?
Not yet.
Right. Okay. Now, running the Mental Health Authority can't be easy. We all understand the lack of resources. In fact, that's how you and I met for the first time, when I was doing a story about the absolute lack of resources in mental health. And I was as shocked then, as I am today, to discover that we still haven't figured out how to fund mental health. But how do you manage without? So today, those who are in our psychiatric institutions, those who are visiting with mental health issues, how are we taking care of them?
Kujo, it's been a struggle for the authority and its facilities. Maybe let me explain why I'm in black. I just came from a 1 week service or funeral service for a colleague from the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, FCDO. They are the main funders of the Mental Health Authority, and because of them, the authority has been able to do most of what we're doing now, and WHO also gives its support. We do get some monies from the ministry, of course, from Ministry of Finance through the Ministry of Health, but of course it's not enough. It goes into to the facilities for the running of the facilities. Again, it's not enough. So if you've been to the facilities recently, you will realize that they have had to put some charges on the care for clients to pay to be able to access the care. This is quite worrying, because then we are putting the care out of reach of some people, which shouldn't happen. And so we definitely need to find a way of funding mental health. But let me mention that if you remember, the Act established a mental health fund. It's not been operationalized, should I say, because we've not had a source of funding for the levy that should be determined. And again, we keep, should I say, advocating, lobbying that a levy should be found to be able to operationalize this fund, because it will go a long way to help fund the care of mental health, especially not just the facilities, but even the communities.
Prof. Beyuo, so over half of the mothers you surveyed in your work presented with postpartum. Are we even aware as a nation that half of the mothers who deliver children in this country develop mental illness because of it? Is Prof. Beyuo on the line? Prof, can you hear us? Okay, let's give Prof. Beyuo a minute and reconnect to him so we can hear him on that. But I guess same question. I mean, you've already talked about the lack of capacity, Prof. Appau. Beyond the lack of capacity, though, it appears that we don't even know how serious the problem is. To say that half of the women who deliver children in this country will develop mental illness because of it, that is phenomenal, is it not?
It is, and like you rightly said, it's that common, and yet we fail to see that it is common. And like I'm sure Titus would be the person to deal with it, but maternal mental health actually deals basically with psychological well-being of the woman during pregnancy, during childbirth, and up to about a year after childbirth, right? And all these, the process has its own challenges, okay? And I think what we fail to realize is that pregnancy is not just a biological event. It is an adaptive process, and that process comes with its own challenges. So let's take a look. For instance, pregnancy. A woman gets pregnant, even how she reacts to it or the partner reacts to it can lead to some psychological challenges, right? So a woman gets pregnant, the father or the partner says, "Are you sure it's mine?" That is traumatic enough for to get this lady into some form of psychological trauma, isn't it? And let me give you an example. One day I was in my office when a colleague of mine came into my office, and she looked all sad and all that. I was like, "What's going on?" And she goes like, "I think I'm pregnant." And I'm like, "Okay, I don't want to be pregnant." I'm like, "Have you even checked?" He said, "No, I'm just And this lady was stressed because of the pregnancy. She's not even tested to see if she is really pregnant or not. Both she and the husband are stressing over it. So some of these things can actually cause psychological trauma, should I say. And then let's go further. During pregnancy, there's a strain on relationship between the woman and the partner, because all focus is now on the pregnancy, isn't it? And the relationship may be strained. The woman goes through changes, their body changes. Some women are blessed, they look more beautiful during pregnancy, they are blessed, but others do have some body changes that really is traumatic for them. And and unfortunately, some medical conditions come up during pregnancy. So you realize that their sugars go up, their BPs go up. All these can contribute to psychological complications. So this can tip the woman into some anxiety disorders, can tip the woman into depression, and sometimes psychosis in that. When you take childbirth, even though childbirth is brief, it can be very traumatic. I was listening to the documentary, and I think one lady mentioned getting an episiotomy during that, and that alone tipped her into depression. So childbirth can also be very traumatic. When it gets to after delivery, the first few weeks and so on, you're looking at someone who is physically exhausted from birth and even taking care of the baby, pains from the childbirth, from trauma during delivery and all that. You're looking at establishing breastfeeding. It's not easy. I can tell you, Kojo, I couldn't breastfeed my baby. Why? Because I couldn't even get it right. And that is traumatic in itself. There's this sleep deprivation. You are always on the lookout, doing something for the baby, and all these things can tip the woman into depression, into anxiety, and all that. And so after delivery, between the third and the fifth day, you realize that this woman becomes a bit sensitive, or should I say more sensitive, and becomes quite weepy, and so what we call the maternal blues. That maternal blues is so common that people, I think, now take it to be normal, even though it's not normal, because it actually a pointer to the fact that this woman can develop severe depression or anxiety disorders in the wake and all that.
Prof. Beyuo, I think we have Prof. Beyuo back on the line.
Yes, you do.
Wonderful. So, Prof, look, the statistic is scary. More than half of women who give birth will develop a mental illness that could be harmful to their children.
So in the specific abstract you are referring to, we were looking at women who have had children with a challenge, and the children have been admitted to NICU. And it is one of the most stressful times for them. If you have a preterm delivery, the baby has to be in NICU, or the child is ill in the first month of life and has to be admitted to neonatal intensive care, it can be so stressful. And within that group, when we assessed, more than half of these women were stressed. And unfortunately, the system doesn't support them much. But to go back a bit, I would agree with Prof. Pinaman that in women's health, the stress are a lot. That takes from preconception before the woman gets pregnant. In our society, if you marry 6 months, no pregnancy, 1 year, no pregnancy, your in-laws are asking questions. Your pastors are prophesying what is happening. Your counselors are worried. And all that gives a lot of pressure. It's even worse when you are diagnosed with infertility. Those going assisted reproductive management therapy, like IVF, the level of depression, anxiety in this group is enormous. The money involved is not easy. The chances of a successful outcome is not that straightforward. And to make things worse, there are ethical dilemmas you have to deal with. Maybe you need a donor
egg or a donor sperm or the probability of carrying a child that genetically isn't related to you or your husband. All this puts enormous stress on the woman. And when they get pregnant, complications of the pregnancy, which Prof. Pinaman has mentioned, so I won't go into that, like diabetes, sickle cell, hypertension. And then for the baby, if you have a baby that was an abnormality, everybody's expecting to deliver a normal baby. If you are told that your child is ill while in there, the rest of the pregnancy is trouble for you. When you eventually deliver and then baby comes and has a challenge, like this study that we did, and look at the women whose babies were admitted to NICU, we just wanted to highlight the point that these women have a special need, and the incidence of postpartum depression among them is so high that the system must watch out. Unfortunately, there are triggers that include healthcare workers, where you can get unsavory comments from healthcare workers. And one woman said, a nurse said, your baby is too tiny. I mean, if the healthcare worker who is trained to take care of tiny babies will tell you this, a lay person,
wow,
how do you feel? And sometimes we are not mindful of what is going through the mind of these women. There is no psychological support immediately for them. I mean, in proper settings, with this kind of statistics coming up, going to whose child being admitted to the neonatal intensive care should be screened for a mental disorder, and the cause of it is a high index of suspicion.
Yeah.
And some of the times, which Prof has mentioned, when the woman suddenly becomes moody, when they are in tears, instead of bonding with the child nicely, they don't even want to see the child. I had a woman who delivered triplets, and this woman was expecting a male child among them. All three came and they were female. When you call her to breastfeed, she just chuckles and turns away.
Wow.
Right from there, you have to get help for that woman. The husband came and was told that the woman had delivered triplets. They were all girls. The man left and never appeared again.
Jeez.
So you can imagine what this woman is going through. So it isn't surprising. We found out, for instance, in that particular work that women who were single, women who didn't have support of their partners, women who were of low financial standing in society, but you are thinking about all the bills and all of that.
Yeah.
And women who just stayed longer in NICU were more likely to be depressed compared to those who had a loving partner support team, who were capable of providing and buying all the medications, who had the money and all of that. So I think we need to look at these pointers and make an early diagnosis, or if this.
You know what, Prof, I think the more I hear from the two of you, the more I realize this has to be a part one of this conversation. There's a lot more that we need to learn. It is our responsibility to provide the awareness needed for people to prioritize mental health. And so I will kindly ask that the two of you make some time, and we'll come back to this conversation in the very, very near future. As soon as possible, we'll sync our calendars and do this again. Thank you so much. Until then, let's be grateful to Professor Pinaman Appau. She, of course, is Chief Executive of the Mental Health Authority, and Professor Titus Beyuo, who is Associate Professor of Obstetrics and Gynecology at University of Ghana. Thank you both very much.